Am I the asshole? AITA for proposing to my boyfriend is a woman? So my boyfriend, now fiancé, and I have been together for 5 years. He's great, and I love him. We had discussed getting married before a little bit and both said we wanted to, but didn't really say when. Both our families were away for Thanksgiving, so we decided to take a little vacation. We went to Sequoia National Park and I thought that it would be the perfect place to propose. I already bought him a really nice watch. He wears one but it's sort of cheap, and when we were in this beautiful little clearing with the huge trees and no one was around, I popped the question, got down on one knee and all. He was really surprised and didn't exactly react the way I expected. He seemed sort of annoyed and upset but eventually said yes. On the drive home he said that it made him upset that I would just propose and that it was a man's part of a marriage and something he was looking forward to his whole life. So now I feel really awful because I thought it would be really sweet if we reversed the roles because he's always doing romantic things for me. Anyway, he was sort of cold when we got home, not outwardly aggressive, but now I'm just sitting here worried if I did something horribly wrong. AITA? Edit. Jesus, I didn't expect this many comments. I see a bunch of people talking about how he lost his chance when he waited 5 years, but I'm only 27 and he's 28, so we were in college and grad school for much of the relationship. He was getting his PhD and was busy, and I got my master's and started my job and he was still in school. We had this conversation maybe 4 months ago? So it's not like he said years. I'm planning on talking to him about it when he wakes up. But I don't really appreciate the "your marriage is doomed" comments. Update. I figured I'd update since some of the comments were actually very helpful, despite a few suspect PMS. I talked to him earlier, and he apologized for getting upset. I apologized for making him upset and we made up, and then he pulled out an engagement ring for me and proposed back. So all is well, and I still feel a little bad for stealing his thunder, but these things happen, I suppose. But I'm getting married. If you want your comment to count toward judgment, include only one of the following abbreviations in your comment. If you don't include a judgment abbreviation, the bot will ignore you when it looks for the top voted comment. Judgment, abbreviation. Dash. You're the asshole, and the other party is not. AITA. You're not the a-hole, and the other party is. NTA. Everyone sucks here, ESH. No a-holes here, nah. Not enough info. Click here for our full rulebook. Some URL. Click here for our FAQ. Some URL. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please, contact the moderators of this subreddit /message/compose/?2=r/am I the asshole, if you have any questions or concerns. Nah. It sounds like just a really unfortunate miscommunication. Would you feel comfortable with not backtracking exactly, but rather just making it a positive thing? Like, now you know I wanted to marry you. But you can still totally propose to me. Either way, he's not wrong for wanting to propose to you and you weren't wrong for proposing to him. There or nah. What is sad about the culture of genders is that we think men should be the ones to propose to women. However, you went outside of the standard norm and turned it into something memorable. Your fiancé is going to have to deal with that. But I hope he realizes how strong you are as a woman for stepping outside the gender norms. Other than that, congratulations. Much happiness to the both of you. Greater than because he's always doing romantic things for me. This should have tipped you off to the fact that your proposal would be awkward. If he likes giving romantic gestures, then a proposal is the ultimate romantic gesture. He had been imagining his Mona Lisa of romantic nights for probably decades and you pretty much swiped it from him. That being said, nah, because you had nothing but positive intentions and you both seem like solid enough people to work through this. Nah, there's nothing wrong with you proposing, but not all men like it. I'd be inclined to say that most men don't. Roles might change in society over the next few hundred years, but generally I think where a lot of women dream and virtually plan a wedding, men tend to only think about how and when they would pop the question. Remember the episode of Friends where Phoebe tried to propose to Mike? The reaction in that episode is pretty much what most men think, despite society supposedly changing. Most people are still traditional at heart, thoughtful face. Not as a hopelessly romantic guy, I've been looking forward to proposing my whole life as well. You obviously were trying to do something very nice and he will get over it, But it sounds like you accidentally took away his big moment. AITA if he has in the past expressed his desire to propose and its significance. Nah if it was never brought up. Either way, seems to be a communication issue. Edit. Whoa, thanks for the upvotes. Most I've ever gotten. I'm actually going to go with AITA here. Not because you are a woman, but because by the time you propose, both partners should be on the same page with marriage plans and proposal plans, etc., which includes an engagement and wedding timeline and proposal. NTA. But it is important that you be aware of the cultural pressures that are put on men, especially about things like taking the initiative in a relationship, and how this might make him feel, especially as he retells the story to people. He probably feels kind of like a failure, and while this is not your fault, and is a part of the sexism in society, the fact that it affects him does not necessarily make him sexist or misogynistic. It's also possible he's been planning something and now he won't be able to do it, so he felt disappointed. Perhaps you guys should have had some brief conversations about expectations? And #X200B. Nevertheless, I really mean it. You are not the asshole, and how he reacted has probably really hurt your feelings. If you are that important to him, he should reorganize his thinking to recognize that saying yes is more important than who asks. I'm sure for you it felt romantic, and I think it's beautiful that you asked in that way. I wish you two the best. AITA, I'm going to get torn apart for this, and don't think that you had negative intentions here, but whether you agree with it or not, the tradition is that a man proposes. I'm not saying that is right or wrong, but that is the status quo. I think it's great if a couple chooses to throw traditional roles away and do what works for them, but my judgment is coming from the fact that it doesn't sound like your BF was ready for that or expecting it. So you put him in an awkward spot where even just from a social side to tell the story makes this something abnormal. I'm a pretty progressive person, very open-minded, don't get too hung up on stereotypes, etc., but if when I got engaged I told my parents that my now wife proposed to me, that would be the center of the story, her proposing, why didn't I propose, how uncommon that is, etc. So while I don't think that you were trying to be TA, you created a situation that is really weird for your BF and he needs to now navigate. It sounds like you didn't talk about this, about him not caring about tradition, plans, timing, etc. Depending how he's reacted and how many you have told, you could sit him down and essentially apologize. Mention that you really do want to marry him but may have jumped the gun and shouldn't have taken the proposal away from him without thinking. Offer to see if he'd be interested in having a more traditional proposal sometime in the coming month, and treat your gesture as just you telling him that you are ready. So my judgment isn't that you are a bad person or had bad intentions, but you think that being more considerate of your partner and their reaction would have been expected. Good luck, Op. You two have some serious communication issues to resolve before you think about getting married. AITA for not knowing your fiancé better. This whole thread is too caught up on gender norms and being progressive. While it may not be wrong for the woman to propose, it's assumed that the man will do it. Considering he loves romantic gestures so much, it should have been especially obvious that he would assume he would be the one to do it and really looking forward to it. Even if the norms weren't the way they were, you should have considered whether he would want to be the one who proposed. How hard would it have been to casually bring up "I saw this video of a woman proposing and thought it was really sweet, but the comments were all shitting on her. How would you feel if you were in his position?" Or make up some bullshit like that. The only surprise of a proposal should be the when and where. The fact that you didn't discuss this properly and fudged it up tells me that you still have a lot of other things to discuss before marriage. Have you talked about kids? Not just yes or no, but when, how many, does someone need to stay home to take care of them, how will you split finances and chores if that happens, what religion will you raise them with if any, etc. And that's just one discussion about one topic. Nah. You definitely didn't do anything wrong, and while objectively it shouldn't matter who does the proposing, he may have just always pictured doing it himself, or he may have even had some ideas or a plan for how he was going to propose to you. Maybe apologize and let him know that you would still love it if he surprised you with a proposal as well. Congrats on your engagement. Nah, but also everyone sucks a tiny bit, I feel like, with a proposal, which, unfortunately, has deeply ingrained gender stereotypes. Among even the most progressive people, you really could have at least taken his temperature on this first, for everyone's sake. For example, causally bringing up another woman who proposed to see how he reacts. I'm kind of mystified by each of you being so shocked at the other's actions/reactions, and not because of gender norms. How did you guys, in 5 years of dating, never even have a single clarifying conversation about this scenario? This might be a leap, but I'm a little worried about whether you guys are on the same page in general about marriage. Had he been dragging his feet for a long time? Something else feels off about his reaction. Sounds like a beautiful proposal though. NTA. I can understand him being a bit upset that you scooped him, but being taken off guard is one thing. Couching his disappointment in insecure sexist BS is another. A man's part of marriage. Give me a break. Was he gonna ask your dad's permission, too? On the other hand, a proposal and the circumstances thereof are something you should be 100% on emo, if not on exact timing then at least in the gist. Nothing worse than, say, springing a public proposal on someone who would hate the attention and/or decline. If marriage is in the cards, and he did accept, congrats, you might have discussed proposal ideals at least in vague terms and avoided this. You may be able to make it up for him in wedding details. NTA. Not going with NA because I think his attitude towards you is pretty off. The important thing here is your shared future together, not who asked who the question. He shouldn't be sulking and making you feel bad. You did nothing wrong at all, greater than sort of annoyed and upset but eventually said yes. Do you really want to marry on that enthusiasm? Nah, because F gender roles, but that doesn't mean you can't have empathy for him being a victim of patriarchy, too, just as women are. For instance, how'd you feel, honestly, if he asked you to wait at the altar while he walked down to you with his mom, dad? Thrown? A bit miffed? Maybe even a little robbed? It's not rational. It's not empowering, but it's a sad fact of our upbringing, advertising and normalization. He can't help being beholden to that, so cut him some slack for being hurt, even if, in the wider political sense, it's silly. Nah. I know I'm a bit late to the party, but this brought up a memory for me that I want to share with you because it might shed some light on why he might have reacted the way he did. A few years ago, I was sharing an apartment with two of my very good friends. I ended up being his best man. They had been dating for 7 years, and she was losing hope that he was ever going to propose. Little did she know, he had already bought the ring she wanted, but he had an incredible surprise proposal planned. The thing was, it had to happen at a certain time, in a certain place. She confided in me that she was going to do something similar to what you described, and I had to talk her out of it and convince her to wait without giving up the game. 7 months later, the proposal happened. It was literally the most beautiful moment of their relationship because every bit of it was perfectly thought out. If she had jumped the gun, they would never have that memory. You were in no way wrong for what you did, but it's understandable that he was put off by it. Even if he didn't have some elaborate plan, there's very little in a conventional marriage setup that allows the guy to be an active participant. It's widely accepted that the wedding is her day. The proposal is the closest that a man gets to feeling that way. Give him some space to sort out his emotions. I doubt it will be the end of things for you two. Edit. Also, for everyone saying that he can just propose back, that's not how proposals work. The whole point is that one person offers a marriage contract, and the other, hopefully, accepts. It might be a nice thought, but the emotional weight of the moment is gone. Info. Are you sure he was actually ready to marry you? Because if he thinks it's up to the man to propose, and he wanted to marry you, then he would have proposed already. I'm not sure marriage is a good idea when the partner has to reluctantly accept the proposal. It should be a clear and easy yes, nah. You had good intentions, but I understand his having imagined proposing his whole life and unexpectedly losing the moment. You're going to be married, it's appropriate you work through his being upset and that you're being upset by how he handled it. Most importantly, congratulations on the engagement. NTA. I mean, I think some guys would love to be proposed to, sadly your BF wasn't one. But there was no way to know that beforehand. Also, I'd be annoyed that it's a man's part of the marriage, but that's just me. Skeptical. NTA. Women are in a really difficult situation on this one. A woman isn't allowed to propose because it's a man's job, but then if you are ready for that step and you feel your relationship is ready for that step, you're supposed to just wait around in the hopes that he will do it? You certainly can't ask him to, or you're giving him an ultimatum, which is universally seen as bad. Society thinks it's perfectly fine for a woman to wait in limbo while on the other hand passing comments about her ticking clock. I can understand why he would want to propose, and he possibly had an idea in his head of how he would do it, but he still could do it if he wanted, as you don't have a ring yet. If he was waiting for a particular reason, then instead of sulking he should talk to you about that. But if he doesn't, he should grow up instead of shitting all over a lovely moment because you beat him to the punch. A very gentle AITA. Based on how you described his reaction, the fact that you've been together for 5 years, and that you're already aware that he enjoys does a lot of romantic things for you, I'd put money on him having already had a plan to do this, maybe even a plan that was already underway. I say it because it's almost exactly what had happened when I had my proposal ruined for me. I had the ring picked and sized, and in my pocket when it happened. He's probably extremely disappointed, so give him time to think it through / sleep on it, and talk to him about it. If he's not ready to talk on it, don't push him, but my money is on there was already a plan that he'll now never get to enact. I don't really like his reaction. I get being disappointed, and if he had a whole plan then this has been ruined, but to sulk even now that you're home, to the point you're here writing on Reddit about it is wrong. A couple hours of disappointment and then it's time for everybody to start talking. I'm not judging this one, but you guys need to talk. NTA. In my opinion, if he loves you, and wants to marry you, I don't see why this should matter at all. NTA. It was sweet. I can get him being a little disappointed, but being cold and harsh seems like an overreaction. Always hear men would like women to take more responsibility / initiative in relationships, but when you do, nah, but only barely, but a definite lack of communication and understanding. If you are going to flip the traditional roles on something like this, you really should make sure it's a thing your partner would be cool with first. A proposal is something that can't be undone and changed after the fact. Sure, he could still propose to you, but it can't ever really be the same as being the proposal. That opportunity is gone forever for him, assuming you two go on to have a lifelong happy marriage. At the same time, he's had years to do it himself and didn't, which may or may not be relevant depending on your age and the progression of your relationship. It's definitely the sort of thing that should have been brought up in some way or another before it happened, even if as simply as watching a random video of a woman proposing and casually asking what he thinks of the idea. AITA. Because proposals should always be discussed first. I know some people think that's less romantic, but there's things that are important to know before you take that step. Are they more traditional or non-traditional? Are they more into something grand or something more intimate? You're not the asshole for challenging the gender norm of proposals, but for proposing without discussing it with your boyfriend first and seeing what he wanted. I won't vote NaH because the person wanting to propose has a responsibility to ask those questions. AITA. I actually really like the idea, and you did everything right except ask if he'd be okay with it. I think couples should discuss things like this before getting married. For example, my wife wanted to pick out her ring when I asked what she'd say if I proposed. If I surprised her, she probably wouldn't have liked the ring as much. 5 years, and yet somehow, a conversation about marriage / proposals / the vast importance that this act held to him never came up. Huh? Sounds like maybe this oversight is on him. NTA. What's wrong with that? NTA. My wife proposed to me. She beat me by a few months. I was planning to propose to her that same summer in her favorite place, White Sands National Monument. Instead, she proposed to me in March and we got married that summer at White Sands. Maybe he feels emasculated. Our society has hammered that being a men's role, a big ring, and grand proposals. Now telling the story won't be what he might have imagined it would be. It's not your fault. I think more women should do this and more men should be okay with it. Congrats. AITA, he said, it was something he was looking forward to his whole life. I'm going with AITA. You're not the asshole for proposing. It's great to see regressive gender roles finally becoming less common. But you are an asshole for proposing and never seriously discussing it with him beforehand. Discussing marriage a little bit and then springing a proposal is not the same. Especially considering that you were planning to go against a strong cultural tradition that was bound to garner more attention and even ridicule from sexist friends and family. It wasn't fair to make that decision yourself. Marriage and their proposals should always be talked about beforehand between the couple. He has every right to be upset. Diminishing his feelings by saying "but I'm going against gender roles" will only minimize his feelings further and distract from the real problem. which is you making big decisions as a couple without proper communication. You need to work on better communication. If you keep making big decisions for the two of you throughout your marriage, it's going to create deep resentment in him. AITA. Not trying to make you feel worse, this just kind of feels like something that could have easily been communicated before it happened and you would have known how he felt about it. I feel like too many people get so obsessed with the surprise of a proposal that they forget about the other partner in the situation. I know you love him and care about his feelings, but it honestly doesn't sound like you took them into consideration enough. If you feel guilty, apologize for not having the conversation beforehand. My guess is he gets over it. Slightly AITA, not BC you proposed but BC it came from out of nowhere. Couples should generally know when the engagement is going to happen before anyone proposes. ESP since traditionally the male asks, and he already does romantic things for you, he might feel like you jumped the gun. NTA you didn't ruin anything for him. That's just something controlling people make you feel when you don't do what they want. If the dude is that into antiquated gender roles, maybe now is a good time to ask what actually being married to this person might look like. As much as I hate to say it, AITA, and you absolutely should have realized it beforehand. If your boyfriend is as sweet to you as you say in general, you should have known he would want to propose to you in a romantic way and had probably been thinking about it for a long time. Women often get asked about kids after marriage, and it's super annoying. Men get asked all the time when they are going to propose to their GFs, and it's super annoying. It literally quite often happens to me 2 to 3 times per week as a young man in a long-term relationship. Now he is denied the privilege of asking you in some elaborate way he has thought about, and has to suffer through the embarrassment of telling people his GF asked him to get married. While there shouldn't be a double standard, there absolutely is, and he's now most likely completely confused about what to do. He loves you, doesn't want to upset you, but you screwed up massively, and should have realized it ahead of time. Sorry to say, but AITA. Discussed marriage but hadn't worked out when? Isn't asking a little premature at this point? Honestly, I don't think it's a gendered issue. Most people have the expectation that the man will propose, so I can understand him being disappointed about losing the opportunity to do so since he's romantic. However, without discussing it properly first, he might have felt pressured. If he turned you down, would the relationship be over? It sort of sounds like you couldn't wait for him anymore and jumped the gun. A very big AITA, not because you were a jerk or rude, but because you didn't put in any communication effort whatsoever. Just because it's 2019 and women should be able to propose, does not make it a good idea for everyone. Honestly, it seems like you should know him well enough to see this reaction coming. Reverse the roles for a second. For the most part, every girl's dreams about her wedding day most of her life. Has plans on what it will look like, themes, dresses, etc. It constantly changes as they get older / who they are dating. Well, for a guy, that is what the proposal is. That is what we think about and plan / dream of doing. And you took that from him. What if he had planned out a full ceremony, picked out a wedding dress and bouquets, the works? Obviously you love him, and won't be mad about the fact you are getting married, but mad / crushed by your dream being done for you. Even if you communicate your frustrations and he tells you "oh sorry, well you can plan another wedding and we will do it again," it's too late. You are already married and all you will be thinking about is, it doesn't really count / feel special because you've already done it. That is where your boyfriend is now. Doesn't matter how much he plans out an epic or special proposal anymore because it's already been done. The emotional excitement of it all has been tainted by your proposal, and now he's always going to remember that the one thing he's been waiting for has been taken from him. That feeling he was looking forward to as soon as he got down on one knee isn't going to be there because you got to have it. Yes, AITA. You emasculated your boyfriend and stole his thunder. Regardless of how anyone feels about gender roles, and that emasculation bit, it's the reality. Unless you had talked, at length and explicitly, about how much you disdain this particular tradition, I don't see why you thought it was a good idea. Sounds like he likes to do romantic gestures for you, and you just ruined the ultimate romantic gesture of his life. Maybe he was saving for a ring, or had a plan, or honestly just felt like now wasn't the time. I don't want to make it too harsh on you, but Jesus. As a fellow romantic who recently had an awesome proposal that I planned and kept secret and was pretty damn perfect, I feel bad for him. Dude got engaged by his GF giving him a watch. Lamau. Edit, doubling down on this gender role thing. I think you are making a genuine and honest mistake about male psychology. Most men enjoy the positive parts of the gender role that society assigns them, especially when it comes to traditions like marriage. What you did is basically the opposite of romantic for men. It would be like if he surprised you one day and took you to the court and had the judge waiting there with a license and surprise, we're married now, we don't have to do all the gender role shit with the clunky dress and walking down the aisle and whatnot. Uta, you said it yourself, he's very romantic. He was probably looking forward to that moment so much and you took it away. I feel like you should have known better. Nah, have you discussed who would be the one to propose? I'm totally all for breaking norms, but this just sounds like unfortunate miscommunication. Regardless, best of luck to the both of you. NTA. If you're in a relationship of equals, it shouldn't matter who proposes. Your boyfriend needs to have a think about why he's so upset. NTA. I'd have retracted my proposal if my partner acted like that towards me. NTA. Honestly, so good on you for living in 2019. And his reaction is really quite awful emo. He should be thrilled that you wanted to marry him, so much so that you broke a norm to do so. Uta. Though asshole might be an extreme term. You definitely shouldn't have proposed if you guys don't know each other well enough to know that he wanted to propose. The surprise of a proposal should be how and when, not if. Oof. I get you're trying to do something nice and that you want to get married, but man, you just stole a huge moment from him. People go ha 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 gender roles. PFFT. But proposing to men is like wedding planning to women. Also, he may see it as heavily emasculating. A very gentle Uta. Soft Uta. I get that Reddit is all about breaking down traditional gender norms, but they do still exist and you broke one that most men value significantly, albeit with good intentions. Also, one thing you didn't mention in your post but I hope you understand is that by proposing to him, you've actually waived your right to an engagement ring. Now your fiancé may still get you one, but if you ask him for one on your own then you would become a major AITA. I proposed to my husband. He wasn't offended or bothered. We've been married almost 10 years. Uta, sounds like you were impatient and wanted to speed up the relationship to the next step. A life-changing decision should have been a conversation first between the two of you, and if there was any indication that he would be open to the idea of you proposing, then all good, but sounds like previously he indicated he would have wanted to propose. NTA. I am in a similar boat. I have been with my boyfriend for 5 years, we have talked about marriage and that we want to marry each other. I have been ready for years now, but he is just coming around to the idea. I have seriously considered proposing to him myself but asked him what he would think. His response was that he would say yes but he would prefer to do it himself as it's tradition and he's more conservative than I am, so fair enough, I'll wait. You're definitely not an asshole, but I can see how his pride may have gotten hurt a little, and you never know, maybe he had something special in mind for you. Just talk to him about it before letting your mind run wild and jumping to conclusions. This is the man you're going to spend the rest of your life with after all. Smile. Congratulations by the way. NTA. In any way. Actually, this should be a regular things women should do. You don't need to wait until a man wants to marry you. As a man shouldn't. Whoever feels like getting married should ask the question, and the other person should decide if he or she is in the same tune. Nah. My husband and I talked about marriage a year into dating because we knew we wanted to be together. We were watching a Friends episode where Phoebe proposes, and I laughed and asked him if I should propose to him instead. He kind of just got this uncomfortable look on his face and said that I wasn't allowed to take that moment away from him. Turns out, while I was dreaming of our wedding, he was dreaming of proposing. On the winter solstice of our 5th year together, he dropped to his knee and asked me to marry him. It felt like a fairy tale and I cried. He was shaking, even though he knew I'd say yes. He had gotten me an affordable custom ring. I don't like diamonds or large price tag, and had been planning for that exact moment for 2.5 years. He wanted to wait until I was done with college before we started the planning. Your fiancé could have had a plan, or been dreaming of how he would ask you. While I don't think it's wrong that a girl asks the guy, I do think it's something that they should clarify first, because it's something a lot of guys look forward to. Similarly, my best friend has a plan for his girlfriend in a year or so and she's getting antsy and thought about proposing to him. She asked what he thought about the girl proposing. He said it's great for other couples, but he wanted to have that honor for them. Uta. Honestly wish you weren't and the world could just be happy for you both, but you know it won't be. Sure, your friends and family will congratulate you and be happy for you, but as soon as they hear the story, the questions and jokes and maybe even snide comments are bound to start too. I.e., what kind of man gets proposed to? Guess we know who wears the pants in that relationship. Was he too cheap to buy a ring? Sure, it may all be a joke, but shit like that will chip away at someone. So in the future you may look back on it as a lovely thing, but he'll just remember being emasculated and being made fun of. You should really ask yourself if you honestly believe he won't get any negative judgment and jokes about this. Because I don't think you considered it before proposing if you think the answer is no. AITA, but soft one, just because this could have been avoided. This is something you could have worked out by discussing it maybe? It's a bit old-fashioned that the man proposes, but it is still very much the norm in Western society, so it's not unreasonable he'd assume he'd be doing it unless discussed. Also, sorry to say it, but other people come into this. He forever has to tell the story how you proposed to him, and he already doesn't like it. Imagine having to tell that story to people who will make jokes or question it. It's sad, but it's the reality of the culture we live in. It's not your fault that society is how it is, but in this situation, unfortunately, AITA for making your fiancé uncomfortable and potentially for a long time when it could have been avoided altogether just by talking first. AITA. We're in the Reddit bubble, so you'll see plenty of people saying you're not, but in the real world you very much are. You took from him something that every guy thinks about and wants to do for their girl. Had you discussed this before, you wouldn't be, because you would have communicated your intention to go outside the norm. The way you did it was no different from showing up at the altar in a suit instead of a dress with no warning. Go ahead and take the lead as a woman in your relationship, just remember to communicate or you're not going to have a very long marriage. AITA. I feel like it's common knowledge that it's the man's only job to propose. That's the main thing in a relationship and one of his only big leaps of faith in his life. You should have asked him a month earlier what he'd think and had better communication. I'm like cringing and looking back. If my wife proposed to me, I wouldn't be offended if just be depressed one of the few moments in a man's life he looks forward to was taken away. ESH, because neither of you actually discussed your future plans in detail even after 5 fucking years. Communicate. You can't give an actual answer to this post unless we actually heard all the conversations about marriage you two had. AITA. The guy's is romantic, traditional, and you were aware of it. So reversing the roles was a mistake. And, I believe, buying him an expensive watch was a mistake too. It's like suggesting that the man has bad taste. He probably doesn't care about expensive things. If you love him the way he is, you shouldn't try to change him or question his choices. I'm going to do with AITA, but only slightly. A proposal should never be a surprise. You should have at least mentioned something in passing to see how he felt about you asking. AITA. You stole it from him. It's not the end of the world. In the scheme of a whole life together it's a small thing, but yes, you messed up. AITA. You took away something extremely important for most men away from him. This would be humiliating for most men since we have to answer how did you propose for the rest of our lives. It's seen as a masculine job culturally, and even if you disagree, the vast majority of men don't. I proposed to my husband. 16 years later we're good. Just the occasional joke that I stole his thunder. My husband says you should never ask a question you 1. Don't already know the answer, and 2. Don't really want an answer. Doesn't sound like Op and the So had talked it over. It's not a question of whether it was a guy thing to do, but rather, it was something he'd been looking forward to doing for you. And you jumped the gun. I wouldn't tell him he could still propose. That makes it look like your proposal wasn't good enough. Which it was. Nah. There's nothing wrong with you asking nor him feeling awkward about it. However, that you and he didn't understand how each other felt about such things is a problem. Nah. I do kinda understand why he'd be upset about it, but I'm sure in the future he will look back on it fondly. It'll be a funny and sweet story to tell when you're old. Congrats Op, propose again, this time wearing fake mustache. Info. Do you normally play into the typical /cliché traditional whatever you want to call it, gender roles? I don't think it's unfair to say that traditionally men ask, but this is quickly becoming antiquated. If you have quite a traditional relationship, normally I'd say that yes, this is out of left field and I can see how he's thrown for a loop. If you have quite a modern relationship, I think he needs to play catch up in this area and take this for the sweet, amazing and loving act it was intended as. Sounds like he might have had plans of his own to propose. Nah. I think it's unfortunate that the general expectation is this is a guy's role. However, that's usually how it goes. I asked my husband to marry me. I am a woman. I also asked his mother to be my mum-in-law with a mum a few days before, as it was early fall. I loved asking him, and I love our story. I will admit we had a few family members do a double take and ask us to repeat it once they realized I'd asked him. I also knew he wouldn't care who asked because he told me that it was silly that it was always on the guy. Nah. That's just his initial reaction to something he's likely been carrying as a bit of a burden. He'll be relieved in a bit. Ultimately you both had it in your hearts to propose and it's the end game that matters. Good luck and best wishes in your marriage. Nah. It's miscommunication here. Relax, it'll blow over soon. Nah. So try to spin this in a positive light. He knows if he proposes then yay you won't say no. You know he's wanting to get married since he said yes. Yay. Now you can make it fun. He can go pick out your ring and plan where he wants to propose to you. You can know it's coming but never know when. Or what ring he picks out for you. And you can make a deal that he has to propose within the year. That way everyone wins. 5 years is a long time to wait before proposing. Nothing wrong with taking the initiative and now you guys have more of a timeline you can work with. Nah. Definitely took some balls courage to do what you did and shirk gender norms in favor of doing something memorable that makes you happy, but he isn't exactly in the wrong for wanting to do it himself. I was leaning towards into with the man's part of marriage BS because no it isn't and it shouldn't be, but it sounds like that's more of a justification for him being bummed that he no longer gets to do something that he really was looking forward to. Maybe take the advice of some of the other commenters and talk to him about it, and maybe suggest a time where he could do it as well? It wouldn't be as surprising, but you basically have the entire time frame from now until the wedding to do it, so there's still some surprise as to the when, not here. He likely had something planned, which, as I see it, he still can do. As far as I know, many gay men propose together, and lesbian couples probably don't sit around and wait for a random man to do it for them either, so. You just broke a norm that has been going through change for years now and while many people don't expect that, others welcome it. I get that he's disappointed, but 1. I think a talk could easily fix that. 2. As said, he can still do it and 3. I hope he'll stop moping in a few days because it's not like you stole his kidney. He wanted to get married but didn't propose for 5 years? Might teach him a lesson about procrastination. NTA, little but only very slightly. I don't think you should ever propose to someone who's not expecting it precisely because of situations like this. But surprise proposals are constantly glorified and you obviously meant well. I'm sympathetic to your boyfriend's position but I'm hopeful he'll work through it and come to appreciate your gesture. NTA. What an ungrateful ass. Nah. But he needs to get over himself a bit. He can still propose to you, and if he doesn't, the important thing is the fact that you're marrying each other. Man's part of marriage, what a load of crap man. NTA. Your fiancé is a bit though for being a whiny bee about this situation and turning what should be a happy occasion into an issue. If he wanted to be the first to propose then he should have got off his A and done something about it. Why is it okay for men to spring this question onto a woman, but not the other way around? Deleted. NTA, it's 2019, if your girlfriend proposes and you're angry then you are either a spineless man who doesn't deserve a confident woman or you don't actually want to get married and you're not mature enough to have a civil conversation about that. Like, imagine. Oh no, my partner of 5 years arranged a romantic proposal because they want to spend their life with me and I'm annoyed because I didn't do it first. You can still do your own proposal. Just spin it a little, like, hey, this is a little something to say thank you for wanting to spend the rest of your life with me and going through all that effort. Planned to save this for when I proposed but you beat me to it, so here it is anyway. Like, there's something sinister about the implication that he's more excited to announce to other people that he's wedding you than he is about the two of you getting married. Red flags. Girl. A gentle Uta. Reverting to gender norms a bit here, but there's a social expectation that the man will propose. That proposal story will likely be told to friends and family and future children, if you choose to have them. Sharing the story that you proposed instead of him, may lead to awkward questions for him as to why he didn't do so. Additionally, if you had already talked about marriage, he may have started thinking about how best to propose. I also almost want to liken the proposal to how a wedding is for women. Some women have planned their dream wedding or have a picture of the perfect dress etc. For men, the proposal is their thing. It's their way of planning a wonderful moment and showing you they care. Some make plans months in advance, involve families etc. By default, it's assumed the man would propose, so unless it was discussed that you would, he wouldn't have any expectation that you do so. NTA, you've been together 5 years with no ring, how long did he expect you to wait? Besides, he can still propose back. AITA. Here's the thing, you took away an experience for him that he was looking forward to. Yes, it stems from societal gender roles, and yes, there is nothing wrong with breaking them. If you were on the same page. But you weren't. From your comments, your BF is not exactly a feminist and prefers having the more masculine role. And you talked about getting married only a little bit. So it's not as if getting engaged was expected or a done deal. Lots of people talk about getting married for a long time before getting engaged. So you knew your BF preferred the traditional gender roles and you have not talked about marriage very much, and you decided to propose to him? What if he already bought you a ring and had a plan and now it's spoiled? Yes, he can still ask you, but it's kind of pointless now and he may feel like you stole this opportunity from him. People on the internet may tell you that you have every right to propose and girl power and all that jazz, but at the end of the day you did not consider how your actions may affect the person you love, and that makes you an asshole in my book. How old are you? Are you over 24 to 25? If so, NTA. He had 5 years to ask you. You gave him time. NTA, but your fiancé is TA. Wedding and marriage culture is incredibly toxic, and I'd honestly be thinking about the future if my so was that upset over proposal. Being together and communicating with each other is what counts, not the damn proposal, wedding, dress, etc. I could understand being upset if you were put on the spot at a huge public event with all eyes on you because you're being pressured to say yes, but this right here is some bullshit. The perfect world hallmark marriage is prioritized over the actual relationship, nah, only because of the gender norms surrounding marriage that are shoved down our throats from day one. If this continues to be an issue, seek therapy. I'd be kinda concerned if he's really into gender roles and man's place versus woman's place in the household though. Info, has he expressed his dream to propose and to be able to tell the story of how he proposed? If so, then you're TA. If not, then I lean towards no holes. But I get why he is upset. If proposing is what he has dreamt of in terms of getting married, it would be like if you waited for him at the altar while he walked down the aisle. So while giving him some space to be disappointed, consider that scenario. Edit. Okay, just saw in one of your comments that you didn't talk a lot about the proposing part. Then I'll say nah. But that being said, you did ruin, unintentionally, a dream of his which there's really no undoing of. Touring it info on now you know what I want, now it's your turn won't work. The moment is gone. Edit 2, spelling. Nah. I get him wanting to have his moment, but it's 2019, and doesn't have to be a moment reserved for men. Personally, I proposed to my man while we were on our first overseas holiday together. It felt like we were in paradise and kind of happened without me putting a whole lot of thought into it. As it turned out, my Sil's father passed away back home that same day, so we decided to keep a lid on things, and wait a few weeks at least to announce. In that space of time, a ring was purchased and a second proposal happened, which was the trigger to make things public. Nearly 7 years and 2 kids later, most people don't know I proposed first, but it's not a secret either. Frankly, it's a bit fun this many years later to surprise people with that piece of trivia. Have you made things public? If not, you could piggyback off the watch, and tell him to propose when the time is right? Sorry, cheesy, I know. NTA. Why can't a woman propose to a man? He's probably just sulking, maybe he had some ideas, but too bad. You beat him to it. It's sweet and I don't think there's any assholes here, but I do think his behavior is childish. Nah. I fully understand his position, but I abhor gender norms as well. Can't fault either of you. Anyone can propose. Definitely NTA, but I'd be sad too if I wanted to do something so large and lost the opportunity. Gender roles don't make a whole lot of sense sometimes, and you did nothing wrong. A super soft AITA. It's not your fault, but the nearly universal expectations, at least in the cultures I've experienced, are that the man proposes to the woman in a heterosexual relationship. You should have confirmed he would be okay with this before going so drastically against gender norms. For the rest of your married lives, people will be asking about this story. If it causes him embarrassment, that embarrassment will be repeated hundreds of times over the years. I say good for you for not thinking it's a big deal, I agree with that, but unfortunately society thinks it's a big deal. And for that reason, you should have discussed it beforehand. NTA I wish my GF would propose to me tbh. It is understandable that he is disappointed, but he is going to have to get over it. ESH. The mistake is not that you propose to him. The mistake is that proposals should be discussed more than a little bit before they happen. It's difficult, because society teaches us that romance has to do with us just knowing what the other person wants. But a proposal is for both people, and you are risking a lot if you act simply based on what you think will be good for both of you. He could have loved you proposing and hated that you did it in a national park, for example. As for him, it's the man's role isn't really the best reason to want to do it. A better reason is we both wanted to do this, but you got to it by just moving more quickly instead of discussing it with me. NTA, but I think he is just a victim of the culture and society. There is nothing wrong with you wanting to propose, and it is something really brave and I admire you for that. It looks like he is not deconstructed enough to understand that there is nothing wrong with what you did. Sad, but that's what the society teach us. So, he has no right to be upset, but he doesn't know it yet, so give him a little time to accept that a woman proposing to a man is as valid and acceptable as vice versa, and if proposing was what you wanted and dreamed or whatever, that's fine, and he has to accept and be happy for you, and both. If it helps, I would really love to be proposed by my girlfriend. NTA. He has no right to proposing. If you knew he really wanted to, then yeah, it was a dick move, but if not, then he's definitely the asshole. Nah. But to put some perspective, imagine he picked and bought your wedding dress and you didn't like it very much. You'd appreciate the effort, but might also be disappointed that you didn't get to do this part. You did something nice and sweet for your partner, and they got upset literally because they have a dick and you don't. NTA, fuck that sexist, insecure bullshit. NTA. I understand where Hess coming from, but he should be flattered anyway and get with the times, certainly not cold towards you. NTA. NTA, your fiancé can propose you again if he really wants to do a big romantic gesture. You did nothing wrong, yes, some miscommunication was there, but your finance should not be upset. Nah. I get you wanted to do something sweet, but it probably emasculated him. People are gonna downvote me for this, but whatever, this is a truth we should know. Our BFs and husbands are happier when they feel like men, so we can slyly make them feel manlier time to time. Like complimenting him or asking for help, lol. It's silly sometimes, but it doesn't hurt, you know. Some modern women's egos are too weak to play damsel every once in a while, but I guarantee it makes them happy. Sometimes, we fuck up, and I've done that too. Can't remember what I did that upset my SO, but we just have to make it up to them and reassure them you bruised his ego, so help fix it. AITA. I wish I felt otherwise. NTA. I failed to see the problem here. Even if he wanted to do it himself, he can't be mad for something like that, and the part about a man's part of a marriage, it's just toxic masculinity due society's expectations on how people should act according to their gender. Nah, or at most he's I can kind of get why he's annoyed, but it's also not a bad thing you did it. NTA. It 2019, not 1919. But there are still some things guys are meant to do. Buying dinners and opening door are halfway dead. The ring, on the other hand, is still a go strong. It's a manly thing to get the wife to pick a ring on the sly, then the guy buy it to prove they're a good provider. It's like a rite of passage. Good or bad, it could be considered emasculating. I wouldn't care, I'm saving $1,000 and getting a nice watch, good times. NTA, you did nothing wrong. His reaction suggests he's got some gender essentialist ideas that may bite you both later, though. NTA. And I don't think he's a huge asshole, just that he shouldn't have reacted poorly and made you feel bad about it. I personally think it's really sweet that you wouldn't. If my partner had done it to me, I'd be blown away. It says a lot about how you feel about him, and it's a pity he'd take it negatively. Talk it through with him, but highlight that you didn't mean to take anything away from him. NTA. You've been together for 5 years and he hasn't proposed yet. Nothing wrong with that, but at this point it's a shit or get off the pot situation. NTA. Personally, my wife and I just discussed it instead of either of us doing the whole getting on one knee thing. Sometimes people are put off by surprises, especially if it's in public where they don't have time to properly process WTF is going on. Instead of doing that, we just discussed it while cuddling and loving on each other, and that just feels better. It's a shame that we've culturally made the proposal to be this big thing that people are expected to do, some event they have to live up to, instead of just something we can talk about privately. Anyway, I'm going on a side rant, forgive me. You're NTA. At least you didn't do it at a big game on Kiss Cam or something. Just a little miscommunication that he handled kinda poorly. You guys will get through it. NTA NTA NTA. I'm just going to leave it at that, no further explanations needed, I think. NTA. This is a red flag. Do you really want to spend your life with a man who is tied to ridiculous and outdated gender norms? NTA. It's a shame that your boyfriend is more concerned with the perception of others than his love for you. AITA. You honestly didn't have any questions about engagement and proposal at all? You'd be the TA in either gender. NTA. It's been 5 years. He wanted to propose? He had plenty of time to do so. NTA. I've heard guys say they'd be really annoyed if it happened to them, but I really don't see the problem. Not that I have any experience in either, but I feel like a woman proposing is like a woman making the first move, kinda awesome, and I'd be happy. NTA. Nah. He still said yes, but also explained his emotions. From experience, women constantly want men to share their emotions. Congrats, but I completely understand where he's coming from. I've been planning how and when I'll propose to my current girlfriend for at least 6 months, and not going to be doing it for at least another year. NTA. Before anyone gets their bits in a bungle, the BF isn't TA either, society is. It's absurd the pressure put on gender roles still, and building up these crazy expectations. You and your BF can talk it out and maybe even make a day of doing what he would have wanted to do to propose without the pressure of wondering if you'd say yes.